Can I make a difference if I don't even know how?
All right, everybody. My name is Tsoi from the county's Equity and Racial Justice. By the way, I'm hearing myself in the echoing, so hopefully that can be fixed. Welcome to this session. In a moment, we're gonna hear from our director, Andrew Strong. Today's purpose for this gathering is to seek feedback from our community stakeholders, especially through this amazing group of participants in the Live Advance, to really examine a set of equity indicators for the county and how we should focus our efforts in analyzing all its different dimensions. And that's all for the purpose of building a new tool that we'll be launching next year that could be utilized across the region to better understand equity and also for the hopes of galvanizing collective goal setting and action. I'm gonna share in a moment a agenda and we're gonna hear an introduction from Andrew Strong, and then I'm gonna go over the process that we've been embarking on so far here at the county. And then we're going to really spend the majority of time, given the amazing turnout we have, just to hear from everybody about what they have already been tracking in terms of equity, how they think about equity in their work, in their sector, in their field, and how can we better tell the story of equity and also spark some action. So we're going to spend most of our time together in breakouts, and then we're going to come back together as a larger group to debrief. So Andrew, feel free to come right on.
All right, thank you, Sam. I very much appreciate that. And thank you all for participating in this session today. Very important that we co-create these equity indicators with the community, with our stakeholders. When we take into account what's happening right now, what people have already been measuring, our livable indicators, and how do we not reinvent the wheel with this, but how do we use an equity lens, right, to change the way we look at these outcomes and these indicators, right? So I very much appreciate y'all spending some time with us this afternoon. Many of y'all know that our office was actually created back in January of 2020. It was really in the wake of, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, whose trial is going on right now, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. It was also in the wake of hate incidents that are actually happening within our county, and the rise of anti-Semitism and the rise of API hate crimes due to folks blaming COVID-19 on our API, our brothers and sisters in that community. And the board really wanted to do something substantive and very intentional about investing in racial equity and social justice work inside of county government. So they established this office. I actually came into this role back in February of this year, when we just got fully staffed back in June of this year. So we've been embarking on really putting together our strategic work, our strategic plan, our goals, objectives, and then really co-creating this office and this work with the community. And one of the things the board was really intentional with when they established the office back in last year was they really wanted us to co-create this mission statement and this work with the community, right? So they intentionally did not have a mission statement developed. They didn't have roles and responsibility. So we embarked on a team on a mission to develop and co-create this with the community and also the Leon Williams Human Relations Commission. So the mission statement you see on the screen was actually a result of a lot of community engagement and work that we did towards the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, working to really co-create this mission statement with our community and the Human Relations Commission. I always like to read this out loud because I think these are words we don't often say within the walls of county government. So it really speaks to the level of change that we're trying to see in our county. So the county's Office of Equity and Racial Justice partners with the community to co-create transformative, enduring, structural, and systemic change in San Diego County government. We bridge county we bridge County of San Diego departments and community voices to design both policies and practices to advance equity. And we champion belonging for all and advocate for people suffering from structural and systemic racism and exclusion. You can go to the next slide, Sam. So real quick, I do want to just show you the structure. So there is a structure outside of just the Office of Equity and Racial Justice at the highest levels of county government when you're talking about equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, and racial justice. We have different pieces of that puzzle, but I also want to acknowledge there's a lot of work going on within each one of our departments around this work. We have a diversity and inclusion executive council that is made up of leadership from across the organization. Our assistant CAO sits on this, our HR director, myself, and basically this is a group of folks who is charged with leading a vision and the leadership around equity, diversity, inclusion in the county. And we have our equity, diversity, inclusion unit in the Department of Human Resources, which primarily focuses on HR related policies and procedures for our staff. We have our Office of Ethics and Compliance. We have our employee resource groups, which are 501(c)(3)s, but they're made up of employees, county employees, and their affinity groups that really drive the mission and the needs for our organization. And we have our office, which is internal and external. We do some of both. And then we have our Leon Williams Human Relations Commission, which is a 31-member commission that was reestablished in 2020 as well, alongside with my office. Next slide. So real quick, I just want to talk about how we operationalize this work, right? We talked a little bit about how we're developing our strategy and our mission. We have a mission statement, but how do you operationalize it? We're working closely with our partners at the Othering and Belonging Institute, who were really influential in creating the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And the Government Alliance on Race and Equity actually has a 6-part strategy that we want to use and really lean into to operationalize this work. And it centers around normalizing, organizing, and then operationalizing the work, right? So we normalize by using a racial equity framework. We lead with race, we start with race, right? But we think about the intersectionalities such as gender, sexual orientation, religion, socioeconomic conditions collectively, right? And we see how the work that we do specifically impacts those populations, right? And then we operate with urgency and accountability to our actions. But then we have to organize. We have to organize like we're organizing against county government in some instance. We have to organize by bringing in activists, people who've been fighting to change county government, right? We bring those folks in to help us change it from the inside out, right? But we also have to train our own staff on what structural and systemic racism is, right? How certain policies and practices have perpetuated racism over time, considering the history of these things, what's constituted structural and systemic racism, things like redlining, things like mass incarceration and Jim Crow laws. We got to talk about those things, right? And teach people what that means, right? And how it's actually helped to form certain policies and practices that have perpetuated racism, even if those policies or practices have long since gone away, right? And then we partner with our institutions and communities to do the work. But lastly, we have to operationalize it, right? And that's how we make sure we develop tools for our county staff to use to help look through an equity lens, whether it's a budget equity tool that we're developing right now, but also we have to be data driven and provide those tools, resources around data analysis, right? And outcomes, and show those big picture outcomes that we're trying to move to collectively. But what are those data driven metrics within those outcomes that'll help move the needle? And how do you look at those through an equity lens? And that's some of the work that we're actually trying to embark on with these equity indicators, right? We want to develop those equity lenses that we want to look through to do our work. And we want to have these equity outcomes, right? That are really built through this equity lens. So with that, I want to just sum it up and say thank you again for participating. We're going to have some breakout rooms. I know Sam's going to go through this a little while later, but we really want to get your feedback. We want to get your feedback. We want to get your thoughts on what are the best indicators? What are some of the things we need to be considering? What are some of the best practices out there? But also, what are some of the things we need to take into consideration as far as what are you already seeing? What are you already doing as far as equity indicators in this space? So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to Sam.
Thank you so much. So yes, in the spirit of co-creation, in the spirit of putting on an equity lens in all that we do, and to be data-driven, I just want to give you a quick high-level timeline of the process. So back in the beginning of the year, right after the board declared racism as a public health crisis, there was a process internally that was started by my colleague Hannah, who's the chief data officer, and her team at the Data Performance and Analytics Unit, DPAL, which began just scanning across the county departments on what is the data that we're already tracking, and are they disaggregated in terms of race and ethnicity and other demographics. And then we are currently exploring just what the tools are already available in our hands, whether those are national level measurements or maybe other jurisdictions or maybe other stakeholders here in the region that are already examining equity through data. So we've been pouring through different reports and tools and platforms, and obviously including our very own Live Well San Diego indicators. And now in this third step is really the beginning today of creating this together with community, as Andrew has stated in our mission statement. A central value of us is not just doing these things in government or in other institutions, but working with community hand in hand to actually create these tools that we hope and we believe will be helpful for us to advance equity. And then later on this year and towards our goal of delivering this tool by fall of next year, we're going to be heavily involved in doing the research. We're going to be building visualization tools, especially online. And then we're going to be capturing some stories that to vividly illustrate stories of equity, and to the point of our keynote speaker, Travian Shorter today, also telling some stories about the assets and the strengths that we have as a community. And then here are some rough components that we really want to build in the report, and the tool is really going to have a lot of rich data that's disaggregated that can really tell the differences and disparities between groups when it comes to different dimensions of life outcomes, whether that's health, economics, safety, environment. We want to be able to have a comprehensive set of data. And then we want to do some basic comparison with other regions and also across the nation. We want to be able to have a history, accounting of the ways that the legacies of structural racism have played a role to this day in the continuation of inequalities. Again, we want to have some stories to illustrate the data, and then we're going to have some user-friendly tools to visualize and map out how this plays out across our region. And then ultimately, we really want to have this tool drive some decision-making, both here in the county and across the region, to recommend some solid action steps as we continue to examine the data. And I just want to take a moment to pause to think about the purpose of this. We mentioned a lot about structural racism. We mentioned a lot about data. And we recognize that, in the words of James Baldwin, that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So we're going to be looking at a lot of data. We're going to be looking at a lot of hard truths about the way that our structures have produced inequalities. But we also recognize that we need to do that before we actually can produce change and produce anti-racist results. So in that spirit, I want to quickly kind of do a quick response just to get juices flowing. So feel free to drop your responses on the chat to this question. What equity questions you think San Diego should answer using data? And let me see if I can even pull up the chat to see what folks are doing. So I'll give you a few seconds as I pull up the chat on the feed loop. I'm not done yet, babe. I also hear there are some folks who are not muted, so I'll take the moment to remind folks to mute if they're not speaking. Oh, I see eviction data. Yes, that's definitely, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic, very relevant and very important to understand. Yeah, feel free to keep putting that in the chat. And as we think about the ways that we want to answer these questions, I just wanted to show you what people on the national level are already doing in terms of mapping equity. And so this is a tool called the National Equity Atlas that Policy Link has put out. And you can see here, there's different dimensions. There's basic demographics. There's a lot of indicators around economic vitality. There's data around what they call readiness. This includes education attainment, and also
Hey, Sam, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we can't see your screen.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what happened there. Let me resume. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So yeah, so this is a tool from Policy Link called the National Equity Atlas, and these are the ways that they're tracking equity, and they can actually, you can actually pull it up in each category and compare San Diego County or San Diego City to other jurisdictions. Very, very useful tool. We're going to be relying on it heavily as we build our product. And then this is a zoomed in slide on one of their categories, which they're measuring on housing burden. And so you can see a breakdown disaggregated in terms of race and ethnicity, and this is for San Diego County. Again, this is a tool that we're going to be relying on and building upon. And then there's also, issue specific measurements. So this is a tree equity score, and they have this map that shows in the green, which has the most tree coverage, and then orange, which has the least. And you can already see even in this section of Metro San Diego that there's variations, right? So this box that I highlighted here in the screenshot is at Balboa Park, which has a high score of 87. But we know there are a lot of communities here who are in the orange end, which has huge implications in terms of temperature during the hot summer months, and that impacts health, that impacts so many different ways. So that's another way that we're going to be, I know for a fact that LUGE, our land use environmental group, is already looking at this. So there's going to be national things that we're going to be drawing upon. There's going to be nonprofits and other research groups that are looking at different dimensions that we'll be looking at. And then there's also local measurements so reports that like these is what we're trying to produce here. So Oakland, Dallas, Pittsburgh, and dozens of other cities have embarked on this journey of measuring themselves on equity for many years now. And then of course, for us, we have the Live Well San Diego platform that has been doing this for over a decade of capturing these top 10 indicators. So we want to be able to think about how do we build upon this to illustrate a more nuanced understanding of equity based on these sets of indicators that we already are looking at across the region as well. And we've been working as an office with the rest of the county departments with our consultants on what equity looks like for the local level. And we have learned in terms of thinking about equity indicators, we definitely need the necessary data available that are of reasonable quality. So sometimes that even limits us. We might have some questions, like maybe folks who are doing in a chat that we want to answer, but there might not be data available. But then using the data that is of reasonable quality, how can we use that to define a universal goal? So again, to pick up on what Trabian Shorters has talked about, we want kind of the aspirational aspect of using data to define goals. We don't only want to close the gaps between let's say people of color and the white population, because even sometimes the white population is not performing at a level that it should be. And so we want to be able to think about framing and setting goals that are aspirational for the general population. And again, we want to be able to disaggregate the data. We want explicit community input as we continue to craft this. And we want to be able to provide something that can really push us towards action. So those are some of the ways as you're now going to the breakout sessions, as you look into a set of indicators, here are some of the ways that we would hope we could define as a good quality equity indicator. So in a moment, I'm going to open up these rooms, and this is going to be a little tricky given the feed loop and Zoom platforms here, but we're going to have facilitators in each that are going to be taking notes, and then each of us here will be given a link to a Google Doc where we're going to just do a great 20-minute session of just a brainstorm and use that Google Doc to both take notes but also contribute, and think of an area that you care about or you're just curious about, and join that group. And then we're going to be looking at a set of indicators that are from King County in Washington. That is the county that envelops Seattle. And we like this report because it's very comprehensive. They have 60+ indicators ranging from different themes. So early childhood development, education, jobs, a lot of indicators on health, on food system, on parks and natural resources and the built environment, on transit, as well as economic development, on neighborhoods, housing, community and public safety, and law and justice. And these are the indicators that are the baseline measurements for them. And we're going to be using this as a template for us to think about in San Diego. If we looking at these set of indicators, what can we build upon? So we're going to be asking you to respond in the breakout based on these 3 prompts. So as you look at each of these themes, and you'll be able to even to click into the report and go into some detail about what these indicators are, think about what would individuals with lived experience. So lived experience here, you can think of as folks that have been impacted by the inequality in the first place, or folks that have been impacted because of these structural inequalities. So how would they see as the causes and the solutions to these disparities? And then I would like you to also think about how these indicators can be used, again, to set that aspirational goal for the entire population, as well as think strategically about specific ways that we can actually fix the structural inequalities. And then lastly, I know it's already a lot and we're going to be only doing this for 20 minutes. Think about maybe additional indicators, additional ways, maybe, and again, applying what we learned from the keynote. What are some positive asset framing ways that we can continue to measure equity, not just about deficits, not just about the challenges, but are there ways that we can illustrate the complexity of this by introducing additional ways to measure? So I'm going to open up the rooms now, and you should be able to click on your screen based on each group. So there's environmental and transit, that's group 1. And then Murtaza and I will be facilitating that group. There's community and safety. Our colleagues from the public safety group will be facilitating that one. We have a third group on education and economic opportunity. Andrew and Zhang from our finance and governance group will be facilitating that. And then finally, on our 4th group, we have health, and my colleague Vanessa and Alejandra will be coordinating that one. So please let me know, feel free to unmute, let me know if you have issues. I'm gonna be here in the main room just for a few more moments. And then we should hopefully be able to go into the room and interact with one another using the Google Doc. So are folks able to join? Looks like there's still quite a few number of people that are in this room. Are you not able to choose?
Pam, I don't see anything popping up here.
So, so
Never
if you
mind.
click join breakout room on the bottom,
Yep, I see it now.
yeah, you should be able to choose. If folks are still having trouble, and if you don't mind, I'm going to randomly assign you in a few moments.
That's okay with me because I can't find a prompt either. Oh wait, no, now I found it.
I found it. I found it too, so I'm trying to figure out which one. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna, in the interest of time, randomly assign folks who are still in the main room.
On the right column are standardized from 0 to 100, so we can get a snapshot idea of how each of the areas are performing in relation to each other.
Because I joined. Oh, no, I don't see my face. I see the slide on. Yes, if you joined into the breakout room, I'm in the.
Check your thing, because I could hear them fine when I was in there.
No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't. I could hear fine earlier.
I know, it's weird. See, this is if I'm not in a breakout room. This is what's happening. Oops.
Just to know.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Gonna give a few moments and also let everyone know that on the chat, you should be able to see the links of each of the 4 breakout sessions. So if in case you're curious, you want to look at other groups, or if you just wanted to contribute more, that's one way to just keep engaging. I would love to get more feedback. I know the conference itself has a survey, but I think for us here for this session, this will be kind of a default way to capture any additional comments and feedback. So I see most folks have rejoined. And like with most Zoom, I apologize for any kind of quick kind of disruption to the conversations. I hope folks can still come back together. So I actually want to use the remaining couple of more minutes to kind of wrap up in a conversation with a larger group about, in even my group, we talked about combining indicators, making indexed or composites. What should we do in terms of ranking? What's more impactful than the others? So if you have to choose 5 to 10 indicators, what would they be? Is it because we see kind of the widest disparities, and that's what Pittsburgh has done over their study, is that they just identify 5 most severe disparities, and then they just focus on that. It was homicide rates, it was asthma, it was unemployment, and and a couple of others, and they just focused on that for a few years. And then, or another way of thinking about impact is, does this indicator tell a story about a deep historical or structural harm? Does this indicator have different implications? One indicator that might seem very simple might actually impact a whole host of other indicators. Or is it impact in terms of alignment? So alignment in terms of live well, alignment in terms of the county or other jurisdictions, policy agendas, and also alignment with what's already happening, right? With nonprofits, with other business groups and other sectors that are already addressing or implementing solutions. So I'd like to open it up to anybody who have some thoughts to share about the prioritization of these indicators. Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. Again, we have the links here for each of the groups if you wanted to look at the notes from the other groups. Anyone else? Maybe I'll go through each group. So let's go to the health group. Anyone from the health group want to comment? I think that was the biggest group, so there should be someone. And this is the Live Well Advanced after all, so I know you have a lot of thoughts about health indicators. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to folks from Education and Economic Opportunity breakout. Any thoughts on how do we best prioritize? Are you more confused? Do you have like way more indicators now that in your head, or do you have like a few that you think, oh man, like these are the ones we got to measure. These are the ones that we got to look at together. That's kind of where we want some feedback on.
Sam, I'll just quickly say, and I don't have a really great answer, but I'm in this group, and I would probably say something around jobs or living wage gap, because it's so foundational. It's kind of like health or these other sort of like, without it, you just can't prosper. Like without your health, you can't prosper. Without a living wage, then you can't parent well. Your kids won't do as well in school. So I would probably choose that, but I would also add that it should also come from the community. So we can't focus on something that the community we're trying to help, sort of doesn't agree with or doesn't prioritize as well. So I'd just say that.
Yeah, appreciate it. That's a really great point. There are some things that are so foundational, like employment. And also, yes, we're going to be doing a lot of these similar sessions in the community to get more feedback from folks that are most impacted. So thank you, Mariah. Anyone else, maybe from the community and safety group?
Similar to Mariah, and we ended up as a group, we chose the law and justice, and there were only 2 indicators within that. It was incarceration rate and juvenile justice changed by decision point. And I think as a group, we would agree that more foundational measure of the juvenile justice changed by decision point, right? The early intervention opportunities and, opportunities for mentorship opportunities, at the neighborhood level, at the school level. And certainly anybody else from our group, feel free to add, and I know that Janie offered quite a bit of insight from some discussions that are already going on in OERJ, but I think too, again, that more foundational, as far back, as much as you can back up, right? That should then have a lasting or a longer term impact on other indicators. And so where can we look at primary, secondary drivers that maybe touch several different indicators?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's definitely thinking upstream, thinking about the root causes. And then especially in terms of the duration of life, thinking about the early stages. The earlier we can do the interventions, the earlier we can identify the patterns, the most impactful kind of solutions we can design. I see here Carrie has mentioned
one of the
that.
things.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
Noemi, go ahead.
I know that I was in the community safety, but I was having a hard time hearing the audio. But based on what I have just heard right now, one of the suggestions, I work inside a juvenile hall for many years, one-on-one with youth, and I do a lot of help with mentorship in the community with teens. I will say that one of the biggest things that they need is life skills. It is giving them the opportunity to learn education, but also a job. A lot of these kids do stuff because they need money. They want to be able to get things. So if there's something that we can put together, like a job, like paying them for like when they're doing community service, like a job, and also skills that are building on their self-esteem and their long-term career stuff. I think that will be something that you can really empower many youth, and it opens the possibility for them to network. Mentoring is a huge thing. I think that they go hand by hand. Having someone that can mentor them, to guide them to find resources and places where they can just be or find who they are, what they want to do.
Thank you, Noemi. I love it. I think this is definitely where, anytime we do data, we don't want to just end there. It's just a tool towards action, towards highlighting solutions that either already have happened or that we need to invest further in. And so that's definitely something that we want to continue to build into this tool in terms of stories, solutions, and actions that we can take together. So I see here in the last couple of minutes we have.
This is Gerardo.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted. I'm the same group with Naomi and Jennifer, and thank you for sharing what they shared. I do believe also that the number of beds as an indicator, basically the lower they are in an actual system or juvenile justice system, the higher the progress or potential within the community that they can be more successful.
Mm-hmm. And yes, that's such a vivid indicator and image. With the limited time we have, I just wanted to draw your attention to the comment from Carrie and Ricardo. They mentioned kind of the determinants of health that are intersecting with education and employment environment. So yes, again, a lot of cross over, a lot of ways that we need to think about how these all intersect. And then Ricardo mentioned.
Yeah, and I think, yeah,
go ahead,
This is Carrie. I just was going to reiterate. I think that, those of us that have, been a part of Live Well for the last 10, 11 years and really sort of get this work, understand that crossover and just the importance of working together across sectors and with this whole collective impact model, but being able to really not get too stuck in our silos of health or our silo of education or our silo of public safety, but just how critical it is now more than ever to work together.
Mhm. Thank you, Carrie. So in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap up, and I definitely invite you to continue to contribute or add some more comments to the Google Doc. And then invite you to our session. We're going to be doing something similar with the community on December 8th. And you can keep in touch with that link and my email address. And I'll be sticking around for a few more minutes and see if any folks want to talk more, but I know it's the end of a long day. So thank you so much for everybody to contribute all your ideas. And this is a great discussion, and it's only the beginning, and we invite you to continue to engage our team here at OERJ, as well as other colleagues at the county and the Live Well team on really measuring and advancing equity together. So thank you so much, and have the great rest of your day.